Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dr. Professor Mom. Today we have Dr. Chris Crawford, who is now an associate professor at the University of Alabama in computer science and engineering. And Chris and I actually overlapped at Alabama together. We went together. I was an AKA, he was a Kappa. And right now he directs the Human Technology Interaction Lab. And Chris is doing some really cool things with the communities in middle schools and high schools in the Black Belt, and which is really why I wanted to interview him because he's a dad, he is an amazing professor, and he's just doing so much good community work. So, Chris, I'll let you give more of a formal introduction and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me, Ariel. You are also are a rock star, and so super excited to join this platform. Currently, I'm an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Alabama within our College of Engineering. And so I direct the Human Technology Interaction Lab, and we work on a lot of different topics. But the work we're most known for is the work we do with physiological computing. So things like muscle computer interfaces and brain computer interfaces, in particular with looking at ways to design software to engage K-12 students. And so that's what we've been up to most recently.
So, tell me, like, what inspired you to pursue a career in computer science? Like, even from your middle school, high school days, like, what really made you say, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so I guess the short story is, computers became popular and my sister got a computer and I was like going to her house and like just figuring out what it is. It's this new thing. I've always been curious about, things, machinery and all different types of things around the house. But this was the first time I had ever, gotten close to a computer. And so eventually one of my aunts gave me a computer from the church that they were getting rid of like old computers. And so it was great. I turned it on. I used it for about 2 days and then a bad storm came across and it got struck by lightning and it didn't turn on anymore. And I was like, okay, that's what happened. And so this took me down a long rabbit hole of figuring out how to like fix the hardware side of
Uh,
computers. And so when it was time to go to college, everyone had known me to be good with computers, and they were like, "Oh, well, you should do computer science." That's not what computer science is, I found out when I got to UA,
Not
but
at
that
all,
was
actually.
not at all, but, that's how I got into computer science, and so I like to tell a lot of people, especially students, like, I didn't know how to program, and so all of the initiatives we do, like 4th and 5th graders learning how to program and knowing 2 or 3 languages, that's so crazy and interesting to me because my path to computer science was definitely not like that.
Let's pause on that a little bit. So you get to Alabama. Alabama is a predominantly white institution. You and I know the numbers, and we know once you get into engineering, there's very few Black and brown people. So you get there, you don't know how to program. How did you navigate the feelings of imposter syndrome, insecurity? Because you know, as you and I both know, a lot of students show up and they are sometimes just unprepared for the major. So how did you navigate that?
Well, the true story is my first semester, I went to my first programming course, and the teacher one of my favorite teachers, he gave a test at the beginning, like a pretest, and,
Mm.
like, I had no idea what any of this stuff was on. He was like, "If you don't understand what this is, you kinda, like, already have failed, and you need to drop the class, right?"
Wow.
So I
They will
dropped
say
the
that.
class. This was years ago, right? This was, a little bit of old school, pedagogy. I dropped the class. I dropped the class, and that summer, I spent the entire summer learning how to program.
Uh,
Every day I got up, there was a book called, like, I don't know, Priming for Dummies or something. Python
mm,
was just coming out. That was, right, probably one of the best things I had done because
wow.
this was, like, before Python was kinda really popular for AI and that kinda stuff. So, one summer, like, literally every day, I woke up and I programmed sun up to sundown.
So you basically so in the class, so for people who may not know or have kids that are want to pursue computer science, you decided to drop your computer science class. So you were just taking kind of like the basic engineering courses, calculus, physics, chemistry, and then that summer you taught yourself how to program. Yeah,
Yes.
God put you exactly where you needed to be because I have been trying to teach myself Python for 5 years. and I have gotten just a little bit of all I need to reduce synchrotron data.
Well,
That's
this
about as
is
good as I got.
well, see,
Yeah.
for me, it was very much at least how I viewed it at that point. It was learn how to program or
Mm,
go back home.
yeah,
So I would have learned how to do anything, to be honest, at
right.
that point. Like I didn't want to go back home, right? And so I literally spent that entire summer making sure that when classes started next semester, I knew it and it worked out.
Yeah. So you leave Alabama, you decide. So what kind of makes you okay? So we also know that you can make a lot more money in industry as an engineer. So what made you want to go the academic route? Like what made you want to be a professor?
Well, I guess the core reason was that I actually had a decent amount of or
Mm,
experiences in industry during my graduate school days. So
okay.
I had a lot of time as an intern. There was even times where I was working part-time for a big tech company and kind of going to school. And so in that time, I got a really heavy dose of like what it may look like to be in industry and also what it may look like to stay in academia.
Mm,
And one of the things that I guess made me tick, I guess, about the work I was doing is the ability to explore new things that people like hadn't explored before, right? Just to do new things and like, oh my God, we were the first people to connect this to this and look what happened, right? I had a project that was of that flavor that got really popular in one of these companies internally.
okay.
And, everybody it was so hyped. My manager's manager, it was going up the chain and everyone was like, yes, we're going to show this at this big tech conference. I'm being abstract, intentionally. And it got to one manager, like, I don't know, like 5 levels up. And he was like, how can we sell it?
Mm,
And then my other managers were like, yeah, we can sell it, but like it's super cool. Like we got to show people this. And the idea just died on the table. And
yeah.
I was like, ooh. And
I don't like this. I don't like
yeah,
this. Yep.
I didn't like the idea of like creating something that's very innovative, and it's just not me drinking my own Kool-Aid, it's like everybody was hyped about it. I'm like, "Oh,
Right.
it's about to go," and it was that one person was like, "Nope," and so, for me, that was the defining moment. My advisor would tell you that I came to him, I think maybe that summer before that, and I told him, like, "I'm going to industry," like,
Mm,
I'm going to industry. I had already picked out a place to stay in California. I
wow.
was there. So that experience, like literally that one experience made me like do a 180.
I think too, you bring up a valid point of like 'cause people will, especially for engineers, you're like, why people are like, why did you choose academia? Blah blah this, and a lot of it is the autonomy and the flexibility, right? If you get to work on the things that you're extremely passionate about, and when you're in industry, it's very like final numbers driven, like, and so you could be really passionate about this one thing, but if they're like, actually, we're gonna shift gears, go this route, then that dies, right? And now you're just switching to whatever they want. And some people operate well like that. But if you're really creative and innovative and you want to keep that going, academia is perfect for you. Because I even get that question like, oh, you can make so much more money in industry. Well, money is not everything in certain situations, right? I always say, if I was financially driven, I probably would not even have gotten a PhD. I probably would have just
Oh
went and gotten
yes,
an
yes.
MBA and been done with
No,
it.
no. Actually, that's my part of my first initial talk to students. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, well, why do you want to join a research lab? And eventually I try to get to the point of seeing kind of you like here because of like financial, motivations, or are you here because you are curious
yeah,
and you like tinkering? And there's nothing wrong with either of those. But if I find a student who's really driven to like I was mentoring a student the other day and they were like, "I know I wanna go in industry and work this," and I'm like, "Well, you could join the lab and do this stuff, but if this is what you wanna do, if I were you, I would be focusing on these other things and not
right.
necessarily gaining these skills, which will really prepare you to go to graduate school away." So, I think it's very important for students to really think about that, and if you don't know now, great, just try both if you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had a student, who was initially a PhD student, and when he broke down like really what he wanted to do, I was like, listen, not if you get a PhD, it's going to make you extremely overqualified for this position. So let's kind of reel it in. Let's see, what are our motivations? And we both decided getting a master's is the right route for him, right? Because he doesn't need a PhD. So now you're this professor, you run a lab, you're a family guy. So kind of tell me, like, how do you balance the responsibilities of being a professor with now being a parent?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say about that is you learn that process every day. Like,
Mhm.
there are some skill sets where like programming, or sure, I learned some niche things about programming every quarter. So, but most of what I know about programming doesn't really change much. The thing I'll say about being a parent
Mm,
is, as your family progress and the child gets older, it's very dynamic, right?
mm.
And so for me, it is a learning lesson really every
Yeah,
day,
every
right?
day. Yeah.
And so, balancing it, my father, he always has this thing of saying, one day at a time, one day at a time. And
Mm,
it's literally like, I wake up, okay, this is what's happening. All right, this is what I think is good. This is what I think I should prioritize today versus yesterday. In my experience, this is a very dynamic process of
yeah,
balancing the two.
yeah.
Oftentimes, you can read like, I don't know, self-help literature and it comes up with all of these structures and
Yeah,
tables and
yeah,
this and that, right? But for me, it's way more dynamic, right?
yeah.
Oftentimes it's helpful to have like a general guide, but yeah, it is a very dynamic process.
And I think too, you bring up I like your dad's, like, motto of, like, one day at a time because the way academia works is it's kinda difficult to plan the days ahead. I'm an experimentalist, so it's like something breaks. A student may have 2 weeks of experiments planned, but then something breaks.
Nothing breaks.
Like you
Yep.
said, it's dynamic. It's like, okay, well, that plan's out the window. And then parenthood is like that too, because kids, especially toddlers, from day to day, they're like different personalities. I'm asking my son to myself, like, do you have split personality disorder? Because this morning you were one and this evening. So it's also hard to, you may think, okay, this evening I'm gonna get home, I'm gonna cook dinner, and then you walk in the door and your kid just starts throwing up. And you're
Yep.
like, okay, so DoorDash it is.
Yep. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I agree with that. So let me this is another question. I struggle with this too. When you are like, especially like in science and engineering, like there are methods. Like you're like A, B, C, D. And so you feel you have a lot of control. And that's why engineers are like control freaks.
Yes.
Because you feel like there's a process to everything, right? There's a process to the way you do this. And that can be very difficult to let go of in parenthood. I don't know if you struggle with that a little bit of like kind of like how you reach this, well, this is just going to be one day at a time. Did you already have that thought process going into it? Or did you figure that out along the way?
So I got lucky, I guess. And in my program, the program I eventually completed my graduate studies in was human-centered computing, which takes a lot of theory and methods from like psychology and like things about
Mm,
studying human and human behavior, right? And so there's still a side of me that's very structured. I mean, I tell people all the time, like I spent like what 4 years studying like human computer interaction, ACI, ACC stuff. And I still will like regress back to the things that I learned in undergrad because I feel like that's the first thing I learned, right?
hmm.
And so when I do get in that mode, it is like very, very like challenging. But typically I like to look for these indicators, right? So,
Mm,
if I notice a certain thing is changing either my behavior or behavior in the house, right? I'll try to like apply things like mindfulness training and
good.
self-regulation and that kind of stuff. Another thing, I started not too long ago, but like just being a little bit more conscious on like fitness and stuff and like hiring a fitness trainer. It sounds so cliche, but it's just like now get up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 o'clock and work out for an hour. It's
I
no
love this.
skip days. It's just like it's locked in. Someone is gonna call me. So big shout out to my trainer, Roland Burke. I don't know. But I mean it's little things like that, I think, that help me break away from the pragmatic and applied nature of like engineering, right? And I again, I got lucky because I had to sit in these classes in graduate school
Right.
and kinda understand these methods. And even there, there's still structure to it, but there's a little room of, like, understanding and stepping back and observing human behavior and trying to deal with that. So I sometimes apply things I learned in my graduate studies with my daughter, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's been very helpful, I will say that.
And I think I didn't think about this until you said it when your research is so human centered and human focused and you kind of understand psychology. So when you see a behavior, I'm imagining that you're less reactive in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? I think I didn't even think about that. I'm like the opposite. Like I'm like very reactive in the beginning. So I like that like that piece of being mindful, right? Especially when you're interacting with a toddler, of being very mindful. But I also like that you apply that even to yourself because sometimes with this job or any professional, you very much get caught up in the day to day of work and you kind of forget about like taking care of yourselves. Like you said, working out, like it's also a space where you could just chill for a minute mentally, like think about some other things. So I like that you do that. So kind of on that note, like what do you think what strategies have you used to help you kind of balance both role up all of your roles, right? Whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a community activist, a lot of outreach, and your role as a professor and mentoring students, like what strategies have you used so far, especially now that you've gotten tenure that you feel like have been effective in this process?
So I will say, I reiterate the health and fitness stuff, like structuring it in. And one thing I'll add to that is oftentimes, and I said it to myself, and say, I don't have time to work out. Like you think like I have to
Mm,
do this, I have to go pick up
yep.
water, I gotta do this, I gotta meet, I gotta grade papers. You say, I just don't have time. You do.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
you do.
promise you, you have time.
You do. I
You
agree.
really have time. You just have to figure out where is most effective. The second piece is software. Organizational software, I don't know, is a kind of bad thing now, it's a trendy thing, but Notion. No, I'm not getting paid to say this. I took a training course on how to effectively use Notion. And so now everything is so much better because I have grants, admin stuff, service stuff, family stuff, all kind of like at my disposal. And it's like I have a clear mental model of where everything is and how to keep track and calendars and whatnot. So I really started to use Notion really just to kind of stay on top of things to make sure I don't really miss deadlines, to make sure solicitations are at the top of my mind continuously and kind of where we are with these collaborations, where we need to be, no matter if we're like in the pre-proposed or pre-award, post-award stages. So using Notion has really saved me a lot of time. It's like really night and day between when I started to use
Ah,
software and after. And I think when I originally started was right after I got my career award.
okay.
And then we had like 2 awards after it. So I think it was the first time I had like 3 or 4 active projects going on
Yeah,
at one
it's a
time.
lot.
And so you know when you have it's different when you have projects and you have active funded projects because
It's a
but at
lot.
the end
It's
of
a
the day,
lot.
someone is gonna ask what you've done, right? And
Yes.
so it became a little bit more serious to keep track of things, to make sure students are publishing and make sure they're making progress on papers or experiments. So yeah, I think between health and fitness and organization, I know all these things sound so cliche. Yeah, I heard it, but
Yeah.
it's like it was serious.
What is Notion? I've never heard of it.
So Notion is like the software that allows you to it's like you could say it's note-taking software, but it allows
Mm,
you to do so much more. Like it allows you to embed different documents. It allows you to format it. You can generate a web page from it really easy. Hopefully they see this and fun sponsor my lab. It is really, 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 really efficient
hmm,
at giving you different widgets or whatnot to kind of organize no matter what the format is. And I think it's very
interesting.
flexible. So other folks would look at there's another Evernote was what I
Okay.
used to use.
I've heard
So
of Evernote.
it's like in my opinion, a better version than Evernote.
Mm,
Much better version than Evernote that's more flexible. Now, that being said, anytime something is more flexible, the learning curve is higher.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
really you can't just use Notion day one and be a wizard, but over time, after you learn to master Notion, it fits a lot, and I think for academics, you gotta think about we're organizing papers, we're organizing in our disciplines, we're organizing code and repos and all kinds of stuff and, random articles, and then you have, a bunch of students, and you need to know where they are on different so it allows me to do all of that. I really don't need to use anything outside of Notion. So, basically, my computer is running Notion and Outlook basically all day
Okay.
and Chrome or
Okay.
some internet browser, and that's all I need. I could do
Yeah.
anything from those three, applications.
So let me ask you a question. Has there ever been times where your role as a parent has kind of influenced your decisions in academia or vice versa? Like, were there moments where you felt like your roles conflicted? And how did you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about that, I look at it as prioritization, right? So when and I'll speak for myself, right? So after I had my daughter around the same time I got career. And so the
Mm,
NSF, for viewers who will look at this as the NSF Career Awards, a big award. We both have it. And so you know that it's life before career and then it's life after career.
right.
So what does that mean? Well, visibility wise, the work we were doing in our lab and my work personally gained more attention. So that came with more opportunities. A lot of those opportunities were service opportunities, which are great and did a bunch of service even after I had my daughter. But because those two things happened at the same time, I had to choose whether I was going to take on all of these new opportunities that
Mm.
was provided on the career side or whether I was gonna spend more time or not, neglect time away from my daughter, and obviously, I chose to spend more time with my daughter, right? Well, I would say obviously, that's what I chose to do, I don't
And
know,
some people choose the opposite.
it's the opposite. To each his own.
Right, right.
So, think I became more selective with some
Yeah.
of the service work I was doing, and I didn't wanna, like, reduce any of the I mean, I had to deliver on the funded work that I
Right.
had, right? You
You
just kinda
do.
have to do that,
Yeah.
and then you have to keep the fire burning, had to keep the submission pipeline going, right?
Hmm.
And so, the only other place I had really, a choice, I guess, if you will, to
Yeah.
pull from was some of the service work, and obviously, I still do service work, but that's the one place where I felt like I couldn't do as much as I would have liked to.
So I think I 100% agree with you. Like, it's tough because when it comes to like the actual research and the funding, you have to get that done. Like, you have to deliver on the grant, right? Especially if you want to be funded in the future. So you really have to you have to deliver. Like, that part is 100%. And then I agree with you that there's some prioritization of like, what can I do? What do I have control over? What I don't have control over? And I think it's very difficult for academics, and I would say, like, overachievers in general, is
Yes.
saying no. Saying no is very difficult because you have this "I can do it all" mentality, and when you have a child, it really becomes clear that you cannot do it all, and that little
Yeah.
piece can be difficult to let go of, so, how do you balance, like I know for me personally, when I'm at work, I work a very, like, 5 o'clock, I work all day, but it's very difficult when I get home to write because my duties as
Yeah.
a mom cut on. So, like, how is your, like, day to day? Like, how do you in a day, like, what is your routine?
Yeah. I guess that's what that specific point there is what I'm trying to optimize now, right? So I think a lot of these conversations have come up about the C word, commute, right? And so I have a decent commute. And so a decent amount of my time is like trying to figure out how do I optimize this commute? Like having meetings in the car and talking, like not looking at a screen, but at least listening and responding and trying to do that. So day to day is I try to optimize time with being able to talk and to have audio focused work
Right.
and verbal stuff while I'm in the car. That's kind of in the early in the mornings and then in the afternoon. So you wake up 6 o'clock, work out, get on the road 7 to 8, 40 minutes of drive time trying to pick up meetings. During the day, like you just mentioned, like it is a lot. When I'm on campus, a great deal of that time is either meeting or teaching. It's either meeting or teaching. It's not a lot of time to write.
Not a lot of time to write, it's
Not
hard.
a lot of
Yeah,
time to write.
it's hard to write, yeah.
And so it's very hard to write. One thing that I recently started to do is in the days that am not I don't have meetings or anything, right? I put
Mhm.
myself in a different environment,
Yeah,
right? So, like, I might just go to a coffee shop or a public library,
exactly.
and I'll say, "I'm here to write." So, when I walk in, I have, like, somewhat trained myself to understand that, oh, when I'm in this environment, this is for writing grants. And so if I only do that, then it helps when I go back to that environment to stay focused and to focus on writing grants or writing papers. I think the key there that I'm slowly realizing is intentionality. Right.
Yeah,
If I didn't think about that and just went to campus all day, I know for a fact my levels of submissions, whether that be articles or proposals,
would
would
go down. Yeah.
go down. It's a fact of the matter. So kind of being intentional about the environments I work in is one of the ways I try to balance that.
I think for me, what I do, I meet with each one of my grad students. I meet with them weekly, so I put all of those meetings on Wednesday. What I try to do is I switch my class from Tuesday to Tuesday. It used to be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, terrible. So it's Tuesday, Thursday, and my Monday and Friday is like my writing day. And I
Yes.
even very clear with my students of like, if you can't meet with me on Wednesday, you wait to the last minute to do something. I may not be flexible for Monday and Friday because I really, as you said, be very intentional about these are my writing days because I know when I get home, I'm not gonna be able to do like very deep writing, right? It's gonna be like very surface
Yeah,
level,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
synchrotron proposal, something that's
yeah.
not like mindless. But if it's like a big proposal or like a really, long research article, I'm just not going to have the capacity after wrestling with a 2.5-year-old boy.
See, you're better than me because I can't say no to students. Like, that's my
Oh, I
thing.
get
Like,
it.
I can't say no to students. It's so hard. I just see the student, and I had a student come in not too long ago. He just knocked on my door, and I just saw him. He's a new student. Yeah, young guy, and I see myself in him. I'm like, I see
Yeah.
it in your eyes, and I'm like, oh my god, come in, come in. And so I don't know. I'm aware of that. I'm mindful of that. So that's why I find
I used to be like that where, like, students come, don't schedule whatever, and it's like, you realize, like, you are not like, some of the things that you actually need to be doing, like, you're not able to get those done, and I didn't really start being strict in that way until maybe January of this year, where I was like, "Listen, I've gotta write papers, and I just I can't do it, like, because you will spend all of your day
Yes,
doing it."
and I
It's
do. Like, my Monday, Wednesday mornings, I literally have a block in my schedule to just, like, walk around. Like, walk in the lab, just walk like,
Yeah.
literally, I walk around because I understand the value of it, so I try to be intentional about it. But I also understand that outside of these blocks, you might not see me because I'm somewhere writing a proposal, right?
Right, we have to write. And it's like, honestly, that is, like, one of the most difficult parts is, like, everyone in the beginning and finding time to write proposals. So, like,
Mhm.
with that, very student focused, and I think that's amazing. So how has your role as a parent kinda influenced your mentoring of students or collaborating with colleagues?
I think the one thing I always, uh, am amazed about is the amount of patience I have now, with students or colleagues. I didn't have a lot of patience before I had a daughter. I didn't. I was not a patient person at
Mm,
all. But I think having a child taught me that, like, oh, you don't have a choice. You have to be
yeah,
patient.
yeah,
You literally have to be patient because she doesn't know anything. Everything about this world, she's literally soaking it in. A lot of that is coming from you, what she observed you're doing, right? So my level of patience really increased. And so when I start to, especially like freshmen, right?
mm,
And high school students, we work a lot with
yeah,
high school students. I start to see that, oh, wait, you're kind of like my toddler. You're just an advanced version of my toddler, but like there's a lot of similarities between, you and
yeah,
4-year-old.
I get it.
And I'm like, okay, so I just gotta be patient with you because you're not old enough to develop, some of the behaviors. And then sometimes you get old folks like that too. Well, maybe you just didn't have a time to develop
Yeah.
that. And so I can be patient with you as well, right? So I think for me is mainly like patience. That's the main thing. It also kinda taught me that I no longer can kinda be go with the flowy as
Mhm.
much. I mean, that was tough for me, coming from, like, I don't know, ACI and spending a lot of time in California, and people just sit around and brainstorm, and we still do that, right? But it's just kinda like my advisor used to tell us, "Just go under a tree and think about the idea." We still practice that, right? But it's harder to do that now,
Mhm. It's
right?
much harder, yeah.
And so that's just something I was forced to get better at after having a child. It had to be if you have soccer practice and then gymnastics and then you have like you at that point, the clock is on. And over time, I had to just learn to be better at being intentional about timing and scheduling stuff.
Yeah, it definitely teaches you structure, and I agree with you with patience. I think for me, patience for sure, because 'cause I'm a very impatient person, but I think kindness
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
one of the biggest things I learned
Yeah.
when I had my son. I don't wanna say like I'm this mean person, but I was like a very strict professor. Like those students, like if I you had one chance to turn in your homework on Carmen, and like if you didn't turn the right homework, I didn't care. Cause my mentality was like, well, if you handed it in to me, you would only get one chance to hand it in. So
Yeah.
I was like very strict. I mean, there was like little flexibility. And like you said, there are times when students need to give you grace because you might
Yeah.
not have had sleep for a week,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Or it just might have been a bad week for parenting. You might just had a toddler that just had a bad week, or somebody was sick and throwing up,
Yeah.
and you come
Yeah.
in and you're just like frustrated. Or drop off. My son literally cried every day at drop off for an entire year. Right. So my morning
Yeah.
would be like, I get to
Yeah.
work and I'm like,
Yeah.
I need a moment. This boy just like, he's clawing at me, making me feel terrible. Like it's just like the drama of
Yeah.
it all.
Yes, yes. It
And
makes
so
you to mellow out for sure.
yeah, so, you and then you realize, like, okay, you want to be given grace, and so
Mhm.
therefore you need to extend grace, and so I started to be, a lot kinder to my students and a lot more understanding that they also had a life in a real world that was happening outside of the classroom and that
Yes.
sometimes they would need to be extended some grace, and I
Do you
think
think
that
that
was
came with just experience as the professor as well, right? A part of me think for me, like, I guess I always kinda been more of a laid back, but I think over time, just being more comfortable and a little bit more relaxed in the classroom environment allowed me to kinda be a little bit more and I think that along with having a daughter together really, like, combined.
yeah, for me, like, 100% the opposite. If, like, Go With The Flow was in Australia, I'm all the way in, like, New York City.
That's fair enough.
I don't think a single person in my life would describe me as Go With The Flow in any way, shape, or form. 100% type A.
Alright, that's fair.
100% type A, Chris. Like, no, go with the flow. But I agree that with being a parent, sometimes it's like, okay, this is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Because you want to have so much control, and you realize with a toddler,
No.
you
Yeah,
cannot, there is no such thing as control. It's like, I made you this
that's
gourmet
fair.
meal. You told me it was yucky and then asked me for fries.
Alright, that's fair, yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah.
fair, that's fair.
So I'm like the opposite of ghost. So that I think for me, the kindness, the great extending grace really were the biggest now I'm a lot more relaxed in the classroom actually. My exams were the type of exams that people would walk out and like have a tear in their eye. Cause like
Okay.
I'd be like, expect to write the entire
I
time.
know, I know.
That was me. But I think, it definitely taught me. I always say the class that I had after I came back from maternity leave, I always like, God bless them because they got the wrath that semester. I had like a sleep deprivation. They really stuck in there 100%.
My god.
So
Yeah.
another thing I love about what you do is that you give back so much to the community, and I think that's amazing. So, what has really inspired you to give back to your community, both within and outside of like Alabama?
Yeah, so, I mean, a great deal of, like, the research lineage I guess, connected to, it has always been a part of the work, right? And so, whether it's Dr. Monica Anderson, who's, still in our department, I was in her lab as an undergraduate student. and that was my first experience with research, and one of the projects I did there was, like, literally building software to go out and teach, at that point, undergraduate students at HBCUs, like, robotics, right? And so when I went to Dr. Warren Gilbert's lab at Clemson and then at Florida, a lot of that was during that time we started doing this thing called coded days, right? And it was these, basically STEM camps many years ago. So I had already always been around that in the research environment. Being
Yeah.
in really Dr. Monica Anderson's lab and being in Warren's lab is very human focused. And it was always kind of focused on mixing service, community service with research. So I was kind of trained in that in some regards. My grandmother was a community activist, my father, my aunt. So it was also like family roots. So being focused from a community aspect has always kind of been in my family,
Yeah,
really.
I
I
love
was kind
that.
of born in that. And then it didn't help that I went into research labs that also reinforced that same concept. And so and then also just, being a part of Kappa Alpha Psi, we did it service there, right? So it was always I've always done service. I think now the interesting thing about the work now is that we've identified ways to make contributions to both core research and community service, right? And I think, a lot of folks talk about integrating that, and it's very hard.
It
It
is.
really takes years of
It is.
relationship building, listening, identifying problems in the community, but also like talking to other scholars and finding out what's important, program officers. And so I think, the one thing I'll say about that, and this is probably more geared toward like junior faculty trying to figure out, maybe you want to do service, but you have these demands of like,
Yeah.
we need X amount of dollars to get tenures and these,
Yeah.
and X amount of journal publications. One of the things I was very intentional about, and I had some good mentors, is I identify projects and research questions where I could try to address both, where there was a
Okay.
clear technical or scientific contribution, but there was also clear community impact. Right? I could talk to you a long time about that, but it's just very something I had really, really, really was trying to
Yeah.
figure out because I was I mean, I was scared during the pre-tenure process. I was super scared, like, "How I need to get tenure?" But also, you know, I go to these communities. I'm from these communities. My mama still live in these communities. Like, so it's not like I get to see both sides, the ivory tower in academia, but also, like, go, like, talk to my nephews, and so there was no separating the 2 for me, and so we just worked really hard at trying to align the 2, and it's a skill set I try to teach my students as well.
Amazing. And like kind of off of that, how do you see your role as a professor and as a mentor shaping the next generation of scientists and engineers?
So, I'll be honest, I've really tried to follow, examples that my mentors provided to me. So, when I think about the Monica Andersons of the world or the Warren Gilberts of the world, I try to reflect on how they impacted me. And so my kind of bar really is like, how can I inspire those students in a way, same way that like Warren inspired me, or Chad Jenkins, or
Yeah.
Cindy Beltles, right? Like all these,
Right.
like I was really blessed to have a lot of good mentors, and I try to just like follow those examples anytime I'm trying to wonder like how should I approach this student or what type of feedback or support should I give to these students. I think back to the type of support and mentorship I received. I know it's a bad practice to try to replicate yourself. You're not in the business of cloning yourself when you're in this. We don't expect everyone to be like, faculty members. But I think from an inspirational perspective, is definitely something I try to, focus on and be intentional about as I mentor students. No matter if that student is a fourth grader
Mm.
or a graduate student, I try to figure out, well, starting with that, what do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And work back from there.
And I like this piece on mentorship because you've shown and as you talked, you've shown the importance of having good mentors and how they can really shape your entire life because you're mentoring, you're learning from the mentors, whether they were good mentors or bad mentors. you're learning from the people that you had before. When you have like a really good and positive mentor, the more of those that you have, the better the mentor that you can be. And a lot of this job, majority of this job is mentoring. When
Yes.
you're teaching students, you're mentoring them. They're looking at you as an example. When you have students in your research group, then if you're doing any outreach. So much of our job is mentoring. And so it's so important that people not only have good mentors, but people also be good mentors. I even like think about I remember when I was in grad school, someone made this comment that just because a person is your advisor doesn't mean that they're your mentor. And I was like, that should not be that way. Like, right.
There's a reason they say
I know, but we know why they say
that's the
it.
culture.
Terrible.
That's yes.
Right, but it's like you shouldn't, you definitely it should not it should they should both be, like, the same. Like, if that's your advisor, they should be a really good mentor because, A, you're spending, 4.5 to 5.5 years, sometimes longer, with this person, and so you want them to care and be because a mentor is invested in you, right? They're invested in your professional and your personal growth, so you definitely wanna have a good mentor, and I like that you've had very good mentors, but you also take the role of mentorship very seriously. So let's switch gears to kind of like now you've reached tenure. And as we kind of reflect on your tenure process in your career so far, like as you kind of reflect on tenure, what challenges did you face and how did you overcome them?
I think staying focused is probably the main thing, right? We talk about like, teaching, research, family stuff. And then one thing I like to tell my students all the time is that no matter what, like you have 5 years or 4 or 5 years here. Life is going to life. Like
Yep.
there's gonna be some stuff there's gonna be some stuff that's happened that's
Yeah.
gonna like make you be like, I can't do anything. You're gonna shut down, right?
Yeah.
Some traumatic stuff, like whatever, like stuff is gonna happen. And I think for me, the most challenging things, it wasn't necessarily like writing proposals or getting papers accepted. When obviously that stuff is challenging. It's like when you're trying to do that and then someone close to you passes away, right?
Yeah.
That those
Oh
kind of
God, yeah.
things. And I think like, when you have those things that's for me that's the most challenging because you have to find a way to pull motivation to continue to do all this other stuff that at the time you're like, this that's not even important, right?
Hmm.
But it is important if you wanna continue that trajectory, and so you have to, like, find ways to pull that, you know? I think probably one of the most challenging, things I had ever had when I was on the way to, like, bury a close family member, and it wasn't her fault, but, one of the program officers, she was leaving. She was like, "We have to get this in today. My plane leaves
Yeah.
tomorrow." Like, I know I'm like, "It's okay, we can wait, but I don't know when I'm gonna be able to hit recommend." And so, I'm in the back of the car, right, following the cars on the way to the graveyard. When I say those examples as, I guess my mentoring style maybe, allow students to open up a little bit more, and I hear, stories like that, and I'm not to have to tell them like, "Oh, yeah, that's" unfortunately, sometimes that's a part of this. And all of the things that I learned about like mindfulness training and meditation and self-regulation, I think that's when I lean heaviest on those aspects and spiritual aspects of just, being on earth. It's very important in this discipline because a lot of times we sit and we think about these abstract ideas, and you have to pull these abstract ideas out of nowhere sometimes, or you have to combine literature from 3 or 4 or 5 different angles. It's very challenging to do that kind of stuff during that time. And I think just being aware that it's hard and it's okay, get some sleep, get some rest, wake up, try it again. And just being consistent with that. I think that those for me, that's the most challenging thing. Being in having to deal with life and other worlds and come back and be on campus and give a lecture, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably some of the more challenging things, at least for me personally.
And I 100% agree with that because, when you are doing this job and we know it's hard work and all this thing, and then you have these, like you said, these traumatic life events that happen and they kind of throw that, you're being thrown a monkey wrench. I remember my mom was very sick, and I'm sitting beside her hospital bed submitting an NSF MRI proposal because it had to get done.
To get done.
No, like, it was no option of like,
Yeah,
"Oh, you know, I couldn't go to the program manager and say, 'Hey, my mom is sick. Can I get an extension?'" It's like, "Okay, well, you just submit next time," right? Like, so you have to do these things, or even like I had just had my son, I didn't take maternity leave until 2 weeks later because I had a proposal
yeah.
that was due,
Yep,
like, a week and a half after I had my son, and so, it's like, those are the times where I 100% agree with you that can be the darkest times, and you really have to whether it's your faith, like you said, whether it's meditation, mindfulness training, you gotta pull it from somewhere to just keep going day to day because the response and I even try to tell my students, people the sad thing about it is, like, no matter what's going on in your life, people expect you to still take care of your responsibilities, and
yeah,
it's no way around that point, right? If you are working at a job, something happens, they're like, "Okay, take a day or 2," but if something's due, it's due, right? It's due, so there's no sometimes it's you have to really just find the courage and the motivation to really keep pushing forward, and it can really be difficult, so I agree with you there, sometimes you think the most challenging thing is, like, when you get a proposal rejected. But when you have a traumatic life event, you're like, "Oh no, and trying to come back, there's a grieving
trying to
process,
come
right?
back, the grieving process,
Yeah,
exactly.
there's a grieving process. I had really, really bad postpartum depression. And so there's a process through the postpartum depression and then there's the healing process afterwards, right? So it's like a 2-year process right there of like trying to figure it out. And those life events can really be so I always try to tell my students, really learn early on in life what motivates you because when it goes bad, like that's going to be the thing that you hold on to.
That's it. Literally, we started the call off talking about academia versus industry, right? That's why it's important to really have a good idea about those different decisions early on when you're like in your 20s and you're like, yeah, you're like, okay,
'Cause life is great, you have no responsibility.
it's coming down the road. The one thing I'll add to that too, and sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I can't make this deadline, right? I think, obviously a lot of times pretend we push through and building that perseverance is great. You need it. I mean, you'll go far. I think you see some of the achievers in the space. We could probably trade those stories for, another 2 hours.
Yeah,
But sometimes, again, more on the like self-aware mindfulness, sometimes you have to just say, hey, you know what, this battle is okay. I'm gonna shift gears, I'm gonna revise it and submit to a new program or a new article venue. And that's part of also, I think, a way to kind of build staying power, right? My mom always say, give out, but don't give up. That's why I always kind of have these very simple phrases from
I
my
love
parents.
that. You always said give
Yeah, I
out, but
always
don't
say,
give up.
yeah, give
Okay.
up, but don't give up. I say, okay, all right. So I think that that's a very key part in being successful in this field, in a lot of areas, especially in this field.
Yeah, and I think too, so I think the thing about this field is like you have to be I tell people all the time, like when people are asking me, whether postdoc grad students, what are some traits that you need to have to be an academic? Rejection. You got to be able to take rejection,
Yeah.
like literally with a grain of salt. Like you said, gets rejected by this person, you revise it, send it to a next one. Paper gets rejected, revise it, send it to a different journal. But you really have to get comfortable with rejection. If you struggle with rejection, it's going to be a tough job because there's a lot of rejection. Even with teaching, students write something a bad comment on an SCI, right? That's a form of rejection. So
Yep.
there's a
Yep.
lot of rejection in
Yep.
this job, and it can sometimes be overwhelming when you have a lot of personal things going on. Now that you've made it through this tenure process, like looking back, what is some advice you would give to a junior faculty member, someone just starting out?
Man, just starting out, I would say definitely embed some routine related to self-regulation and fitness. I kind of keep
Mm,
repeating that. Pick a few days where, if you're a morning person, you wake up early, go do some squats, some run them out, just do something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, it's a
Do
stress
something, be
reliever.
active. Yeah, just do that, like, absolutely. One of the, associate dean of research, he gave us this talk when we graduated from Florida. He's like, we when we got our academic positions, he said, "You all have already shown that you have what it takes to be scholars. We know you could be scholars. We
Mm,
know you could be great scholars, right?" He was like, the bar is for you to say that. Okay, can you take that and go to this next level to get the
mhm,
big awards and all this other stuff?
right.
The thing I think about that is just I would say the same thing. Hey, your junior faculty, just you got your assistant professor position. We know that you have what it takes to be a good scholar, right? But do you have what it takes to like, I don't know, to be active 3 times a week, right? And I think the reason why that's important is because for me, speaking personally, oftentimes that's what allows me to like navigate all of these things that we talked about and still kind of be able to wake up and breathe, right? And think through a proposal or, some type of article submission. Oh, that's the thing that I would
Yeah,
focus more on that. Everybody's going to tell you to write a lot of proposals.
yeah, yeah,
You should. You should. You should be active. Everybody's going to tell you be organized, come up with a schedule, time management. That stuff you're going to hear.
yeah,
I mean, when I came in, no one really talked about some of the, like, things related to, like, health, fitness, mindfulness, like, no
yeah.
one really sits and talk about that, not for me, looking back on it, like, that stuff was important. That was very important.
And I think too because it's an outlet, it's a way to relieve stress. And I this is my mom taught me this a personal thing. When you look good, you feel
You feel
good.
good.
And that is 100% what I always say. Even like people will say, "You dressed up when you come to work." Well, it's because I feel good. I feel better when I dress. I don't look like a
No,
student.
yeah,
So, and so I really agree with you there that just in life in general, when you take better care, when people say health is wealth, it really is because when you take better care of yourself, you generally are just going to have a level of confidence that you're not going to have if you don't feel good about yourself, whether it's the way you look, dress, whatever the case may be. So taking care, of yourself in those ways. So now that you're mid career now, you're no longer early career.
I know. Yeah, I'm having those talks too. It's like, "Oh my god, wait, something else? Good grief." Yeah,
Yes, you're
yeah,
mid
yeah, to
career.
do something else, jeez.
So now that you're mid-career, what does success mean to you in both your professional and your personal life?
Well, I think in my personal life, success for me at the top of the list for me is like, does my daughter like me? I know she's a toddler now. Everybody say, "When's there a teenager, they're not gonna like you," right? But how does my daughter greet me when I pick her up from daycare? She run
Yeah,
into me or she want to stay and play with her friends, right? So if I go to daycare, my daughter like runs to me and say, "Daddy," right? That is okay.
it warms your heart.
Yeah, you're good. I'm successful. If my wife tells me, that I'm doing a good job every quarter. Okay, that's good as well.
Every quarter, I love it.
It's a good part. But in all seriousness, for me personally, I'm very focused on, having, we have, family and just making sure when we come home, there's positive energy and everybody's no matter what day someone had, you can come home and feel better. Like as long as the home kind of feels like that's kind of the tip. If I start getting home and people, folks going off in their own corners and being
Yeah,
silent,
energy's
like,
off,
we
yep.
gotta work on it. The energy's off, right? And so I try to define success based on that. Career-wise, I mean, it's interesting. We've always defined career well, I would say we, but we're somewhat trained to define it based on, well, how much
That's
money
right,
you have,
funding, that's right.
how much funding do you have, or how many active projects,
Yes, that's
many
right.
articles, journal articles, conference papers.
Oh, yeah,
What was that?
awards.
What was the acceptance rate? How many awards have
That's
you
right, no, it's serious.
and then what were your student evaluations, right?
Yep,
And so from a quantitative perspective, I use those metrics. I mean,
we all
we
do. I mean
I use those metrics. I try to, as the young kids say, I'm trying to up the score, right?
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
I'm trying to do that. And I think as I go into mid-career, some of the feedback I'm getting now is more focused on, okay, what kind of impact are you having?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
What new ideas are you presenting? I've always tried to do that, but now it's like I'm expected to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
I
that's
think
what the
it's a
full
new
professorship is gonna be about, right?
right,
Impact.
right,
Yeah,
right. And so this is a new criteria now that I'm learning, right?
yeah.
And I think that as I progress and get more wisdom on that, I'm sure the way I evaluate success will morph a little bit. It's already starting because again, having those conversations with more senior folks, getting mentored continually on like
Yeah.
how I should be evaluating success and being impactful.
Yeah, I think I wanna go back to something you said about, like, success in your personal life being so tied to your family. And I like, especially the home life and the home energy. And, I think before I didn't really care about, well, not care, I didn't really think about those things. I remember, like, for me, going through in my postpartum depression phase where, like, it was just a very dark phase. I felt like everywhere was dark. Work was dark, my house was dark, I felt like the energy with my son was, like, off because
Mhm.
I'm just not I feel like, I'm not this very happy-go-lucky person. And, like, now on the other side of it, like you said, when you get to your house, like, you want it to be a place of peace, and I had never really also, I've always kinda lived by myself, so, like,
Yeah,
me.
you should learn it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like you, so whatever, but like you said, in the energy in your home, like, if I'm agitated and overwhelmed, my son feels that energy from
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do feel like, when I was going through postpartum, I feel like my son's energy was off, and then the
Absolutely.
minute we're on the other side and, happy and, you're, like, very like you said, my biggest thing now is, like, whatever happened at work, I leave it at the door.
Look at that.
When I walk out of this office, it's there. And when I walk back into this morning, I'll pick it back up again the next day.
And it's
But when
not easy. That's a very challenging thing. I do not have that completely down. I do not. But what I do have down, I think, is I'm mindful of it. I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah,
mindful of it. Sometimes I can alter it, sometimes I can't, but I'm always aware. And so I'll just kind of say it. It's hard trying to describe it to a
yeah.
4-year-old. I don't know. You kinda can't. You can say I don't feel it, my tummy hurt or something, but yeah, it is that's one of those day by day things of learning how to.
Yeah, you have to leave it at and you do because, like, you'll take the energy home, and then the child throws a tantrum, which is expected, right? Or they decide today they don't wanna eat rice, and they ate rice
Yeah.
every day this week, but today it's just a no rice day. And you're like, "What?"
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
like, "Okay, don't eat it, leave it there," right? Like, it's fine with me. I think you have to and I didn't really appreciate making sure that my home is as peaceful as possible until, like, I would say this year. Honestly,
Mhm,
this
mhm.
year, 2025, being on the other side of just a really dark year, you just really appreciate and the appreciation I think for your child, right? When you are in the energy that they are taking with them every day, right? My mom was a
Absolutely.
school counselor and she used to always say, I don't know why parents whoop their child before going to school.
Yeah,
She's
boy.
like, now that she was like, I don't get it. She's like, or yelling at the screaming at the child because now the child's coming into school agitated, angry, and
Yeah,
it's be a bad day for everybody. She's like, it just doesn't make sense to whoop them
not
before
good.
school. Yeah, she's like, I don't. She's never understood it. And I'm like, so just being mindful of those things, like in the morning, like making sure the morning is positive and peaceful, so he goes to school and has a really good day
It matters. It
is so
really does.
important. So we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything like parting advice you want to give or you want to say, whether it be to academics or people with kids, or both?
Yeah, in particular for junior faculty, I think the one thing that's interesting is that junior faculty are stepping into what I think, maybe I'm wrong, I've been around that long, but what I think is a different world for the modern day academic, right?
Yeah, yes. Oh God, yes.
We are a part of the generation for sure that would have to kinda address this with building, like, trust with the general population and science, and and I've worked with organizations, in particular, like the National Academy of Sciences, and there's these initiatives of like having more science communicators,
Yeah.
right? And right now, as it stands, we don't really get how you say
We don't
bonus
do a good
points
job.
for doing it. We don't do a good job, but we also don't get awarded for doing it, right? So when we do a good job, no one is really there's not a lot of awards there. I mean, the National Academy of Sciences has one, but one of the things I would say is that that's something I think is gonna be very important and more important as as things progress of thinking more about sure that reviewer 1 and 2 and 3 are important, but how can you relate this work that you're doing to your grandmother or what.
Yeah,
And I think that the future academic is gonna have to really think about that, and I guess that's I mean, for junior faculty, that's not a real burden I think they should really bear. For I guess for speaking to myself, mid-career folks and then more senior folks are thinking about how to do that, but that's something I've been thinking about a little bit more recently, and I think it's something we should maybe talk more about because obviously we spent the hour talking about like article submissions to journals and
yeah,
obviously that's important, but I think there's this and we can see it this growing distrust in science. I think that I don't know a solution to it, but it's I don't know for some reason that's something I'm continuously thinking about. In our work, we try to go out in communities and like this is what a brain computer interface is, and this is like how it could be helpful. But most of the time we spend is writing scholarly articles, which obviously is what we're guess been asked to do, but it's just
yeah.
something to think about going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point. And I think, some areas are, you work in cancer research that you don't need to explain
Right,
the impact of that. I think
right,
it's very clear what the impact of it is, right?
right,
And I think, like you said, there's so much mistrust now with especially in the US, with the general public and scientists. People don't, when you see all the defunding, people really don't understand the impact that we have on their everyday life,
right.
from your phone, your computer, the TV system, the car you drive, the medicine you take,
Yep,
telehealth. We have so much of an impact on their everyday life, and they don't really know, even though their tax dollars is funding this research, they do receive, a direct benefit from, the research. It's like you want people to look at things from the perspective of if you're deaf, how do you navigate the world? Because you may have a deaf child, right?
right.
If you're blind, like things of that nature. So we need researchers and we need these things. And I think sadly, with the pandemic, with vaccines, it came back up again and then it just was a snowball. But people really don't. I do agree with you. Even for myself, you really, when I'm in the community and people are like, what did you do? Like, why do we care about fatigue? And I was like, well, do you remember when that engine exploded on a Southwest airline? Like, and a lady
Yeah,
died? Like, well, that's why we should care about it. And
yeah,
kind of breaking that down for people. And once they understand, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I don't want to be on a plane when the engine blows out. Like, no, you
yeah,
don't.
no, you
You
don't,
don't
yeah,
want to be, right? So I think, like you said, really having people really understanding, and it goes back to what you said earlier. It's difficult to integrate education and research, and that's kind of where we failed at the most, and is the integration piece. And so yeah, I do agree that we need a better job, but we also need to be compensated for it. And as you and I know, it's 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% service. That is the
and I
break.
think this is a call for senior folks to help
Yeah,
change that. This is, you know I've had these conversations with folks, and it always comes down to, well, if they were either asked or incentivized to do it, they would.
that's right.
But at least not punished for doing it. Like, maybe you don't have the incentive, but if they're doing it, at least you're kinda implicitly being punished for doing it because it means you're
Yeah,
doing that and not doing this other thing that's being just so I don't know. I just again, I don't know the solution to that. This is a big ship type of
it
problem. It's
is.
not gonna change soon, but just having the discourse more about that what
Yeah.
something I've
Okay.
been thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's like you said, science communication is important. Well, thank you so much for joining Dr. Professor Mom today. This conversation has been great. I hope that the audience, I'm going to post your link so they can learn more about some of the things that you're doing at Alabama and in the community, and maybe attend some of your workshops and camps that you put on that are
Please,
really
thank you.
cool. But thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.